to part 2 of learning about flute extended techniques. If this is news to you, I do have a part 1, so be sure to check that out. Still watch this video though, there's different techniques covered. So in this video, we will be talking about air sounds, note bends, tongue rams, pizzicato tonguing, timbral trills, beatboxing, and microtones. So the first one is air sounds, and this is honestly super easy to do. You literally basically have no embouchure when you play the flute. So quite literally you just have the flute here and you just across it. Sometimes you can add in a vowel, so you can say shh if you want kind of that more shh sound to instead of just but that's literally all there is to air sounds. Super easy to do, easy technique to learn. Next. So the next technique is note bends, and there are a couple different ways to do note bends, so we're going to go through them. The first way is just using your embouchure and head. So basically, if you just have the flute, you can practice this with a tuner. Honestly, this helps with tuning a lot. It helped me a lot with tuning and like being able to adjust really quickly. So you basically will have out your tuner, play the note, and you will try everything you can to get the note to go super flat and the other way super sharp. It's a lot easier to make it go super flat than it is sharp. That's just the nature of the instrument. So don't be discouraged if you can make the note go super flat, but you can't make it go super sharp. It's fine. Basically, you can do it with embouchure, so going lower, kind of relaxing everything, and then kind of doing the opposite when you are wanting to play it sharper. Luckily, a lot of times when you're doing note bends, they go down, not up, again, because of the nature of the instrument. You can also add in a little bit of your head moving up and down if that's helpful, or even messing with kind of the placement of your flute rolling in and out. So the other way is just basically finger sliding or finger glissandi, whatever you want to call it. Usually if this pops up in a piece of music, the composer will give you a fingering of some sort to kind of show you how to do the fingerless. Basically these, they can only be done on an open hold flute. But basically to do it, you're just going to follow the fingering, and you want to make sure you are only moving your fingers. Those your fingers. So you can think about literally just taking it even away from the flute. This is what I had to do. And just moving fingers back and forth just to kind of get that slide. You kind of think of scratching. You can even try, I don't think you can see my thigh. We'll do it with my arm. So if you had here, you just move the fingers. Nothing else. I had a habit of kind of going like this for finger slides instead of just moving fingers. And then basically put your flute in your hands and try that. Just moving it up and the gliss will happen. It's also important to keep in mind and kind of get that biofeedback and feeling of the keys and your fingers sliding against them where the holes are, and making sure that the holes are completely uncovered if necessary. Sometimes they'll be like 1.5 covered, which is why you'll kind of want to gain that feeling and knowledge of what it feels like with the hole being completely open, half open, quarter open, whatever it may be. So let's see how it sounds. Next up is tongue rams. I think these are really fun. Usually pretty okay to do. Basically what you do is your lips will once again surround the embouchure hole, and you're basically going to blow air and your tongue's kind of going to follow, stopping. I've heard people say stop at the lips. Honestly, I go like straight into the flute. So with just this, like I literally, my tongue goes like completely into the hole. So basically you cover, this is really embarrassing to show on camera, but basically what I'm doing is quite literally but on the flute, and it makes this really powerful kind of thud sound, which I think is just really cool. I think where people struggle with this one is not using enough air. So you do want to use kind of a good amount of air, like you're doing a jet whistle to, and you want to make sure you really, like, it's kind of an aggressive stop to it. You don't want it to be like, because that's not going to work. You want it to be nice and quick and sharp. Tongue ramps. Let's hear what they sound like. Next up is pizzicato tonguing, and this is kind of the opposite, I think, of tongue ramps. So instead of bringing your tongue out, you know, going, you're kind of going to do the opposite and go. So your tongue basically starts on top of your lips or even sticking out, and you're just going to like bring it in really fast with some air. So doing it with just a head joint sounds kind of like this. So you can also do it just with your lips. I think this is harder, especially when you're doing, like, if you're doing multiple pizzicato tonguing in a row. Going can get really tiring. So just using the tongue again, keeping it out and then bringing it in. And that's pizzicato tonguing. Next up, I'm going to start with Timbral trills. Again, another one that doesn't really seem like an extended technique. Basically, it just gives a little bit of color to the trill that you're doing. If this ever pops up in a piece of music, the composer's gonna put in the fingering, so you know what keys to press down and trill. That's literally all it is. It's basically just following the fingering, just to get a different timbral sound, hence the name Timbral trills. So that's all there is to it. You just finger what they tell you, and it makes this cool little sound. Next up is beatboxing, which honestly could be like an entire video in itself. But I'm going to kind of briefly go over it, just like the very basic ones. I'm sure Greg Patillo, like the master of beatbox flute playing, has videos. I know he has books out, so I definitely would recommend those. But for the basics, basically any sort of beatbox percussive sound you can do, like in beatboxing, you can do with the flute. So the most basic being like a bass kick, so you do that with a flute and you get a little sound with it. Same thing with the different, a lot of them you'll see like a tss and a k, tss, k. And honestly, the way I would learn these is the way I'm doing it right now without the flute, just being able to go tss, tss, k, k, and then just adding the flute. I do think it's a lot of fun, and a lot of times there's different. I think the most basic way of notating it is the same way that Greg Patillo does in his 3 beats for flute. Basically, there'll be like a B representing the bass kick, and then like a TS for the tss, and then a K for k. And again, any sort of percussive sound, there's a lot of ch sometimes. So here's a little example of that. Lastly, there are microtones slash quarter tones. They're the same thing. Basically, they're just notes in between notes. And this is another one where usually the composer will give you the fingering for it. So if you've ever seen like a flat sign, but backwards, that's indicating quarter flat. If you've ever seen a line, 2 lines, I'll find a picture and put it up on the screen. If you ever see these, that's what they're talking about. Those are microtones. Once again, I think it'd be useful to learn all of these fingerings and get them down, learn your microtonal scales. And I think the easiest way of doing this, Robert Dick has a book called The Other Flutist that has all these fingerings in them, which I think would be useful to learn. But if you don't have time or you're just learning a piece, again, usually the composer will have the fingering for it. Basically what these are, like I said, notes in between notes. So sometimes we'll refer to it as like quarter sharp or quarter flat. So if you have like a D quarter flat would be as it sounds. it would be a D. But if you looked at a tuner and played it, it would be 25 cents flat. Same way with the sharp. So it happens in between every single note. So instead of just half notes, so you know when you do a chromatic scale full of half notes, you can do a microtonal scale, which will basically have like C, C quarter sharp, C sharp, quarter sharp, blah blah blah, whatever. Here's some examples of those.